Conservation Advisory Group meeting. I think we will start with our safety moment, I believe. Yes, thank you. So we start every meeting, excuse me, with a safety moment. So this time around, I picked spring cleaning safety tips. Be careful moving large pieces of furniture. Don't want to hurt yourself, so make sure that you're asking for a buddy when needed. Be safe while on ladders and step stools. Don't take it for granted. Always look where you're walking. 3 points of contact if you can. Be careful when walking on wet surfaces, of course. Always follow cleaning product label safety instructions and recommendations, and that includes storage. Please do keep that in mind. I know there's a lot of requirements for some of those cleaning items. And then also, don't mix some cleaners. I don't think that's up here, but I think that's important to keep in mind. Keep stairs, landings, and walkways clear of boxes and bags and clutter. Don't carry too much, of course, especially on stairs. Wear a mask when cleaning dusty areas. We're all very familiar with what a mask is like. Empty your buckets. That part of that is actually child safety. We don't want to leave standing water around. Wear rubber gloves. Just protect yourself from any sort of chemicals, and then put away all your cleaning supplies when done. And a basic but nice little reminder. So I think next we're going to go ahead and do our roll call. We do have a couple of new folks on the call. I also wanted to take the opportunity to, I don't have a slide for it, sorry. Take the opportunity to thank folks who are no longer going to be with us on our journey moving forward. Of course, some of them aren't here to be thanked, but I'm going to recognize it anyway. One of them, Amy Wheelis, is no longer with Northwest Energy Coalition, so they are going to be backfilling her role. At this point, we don't have anyone from their organization joining us, but I hear when they get a replacement for Amy, then we'll have someone, a new person on our advisory group. And also Lexi Bright has left our team. Unfortunately, we no longer have Lexi. And then I would also like to recognize Taylor Mead has been an exceptional partner for the last, almost 5 years. And unfortunately, Taylor is going to be leaving us at the end of this week. So very sad to see her go, wishing her the best on all of her future endeavors. But I wanted to make sure and recognize her during our meeting because she has been the pillar of our outreach materials. And you'll see in our residential slide here just a couple of items that she has produced on our behalf. Very, very small portion of what Taylor does. We're really going to miss that. But I wanted to make sure and recognize her here with our partners because it's been an exceptional journey. Thank you, Taylor. So I guess we should do the rest of our introductions. I think we'll go ahead and start in the room just so that I don't forget that group, and then we'll go through alphabetically after that if we may. So Jocelyn, can you be so kind?
Good morning. My name is Jocelyn Moore. I'm an energy efficiency support specialist with Cascade Natural Gas.
Carrie Buren, Cascade Natural Gas Energy Efficiency Supervisor.
Taylor Mead, Cascade Natural Gas Energy Efficiency Support Specialist.
As I mentioned, Monica Kalasha, I manage Cascade's energy efficiency programs for Washington.
Stephanie Reed, EE Support Specialist for Cascade. Sheila McElhinney, Cascade Natural Gas Senior Analyst.
Okay, Adam, are you there?
Yes, I am. Adam Thomas with ADM Associates, principal at the firm leading our evaluation of the right now the Cascade commercial programs and measures.
Thank you, Adam. Aaron, are you there?
I am just here. Apologies for being a little late.
No, you're great. It's great timing, Aaron. So as I mentioned, Peter's not able to attend today, but Aaron's kind enough. He said he's going to kind of jump in when he can. But if you'd like to introduce yourself, I'd appreciate it, Aaron.
Sure, I'd love to. Thanks. So yeah, my name is Aaron Weiner, and I am a Senior Program Manager at the Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance, or NEA, and I have been working on our natural gas portfolio for almost 7 years.
I'm very familiar with Aaron. I've been partnering with him at NEA for those 7 years, essentially. So it's been fun. Thank you, Aaron, for joining us. Des, would you be so kind?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Desiree Bickmore. I am the Conservation Support Specialist for our wonderful Energy Efficiency Department.
Thank you, Des. Lori.
Good morning, Lori Blattner, Director of Regulatory Affairs and Energy Efficiency for Cascade. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you, Lori. Corey, are you there?
Yeah, this is Corey, and I am with the Public Counsel Unit of the Attorney General's Office here in Washington.
Thank you, Corey. Welcome. Brady.
Brady Day with the TRC program manager for the commercial industrial program. Good morning,
Thank you,
everyone.
Brady. Jennifer. Jennifer, are you there by chance? We might come back to her. Gil.
Hi, Gil Peach. We do some work for Cascade from time to time, and we do work for commissions and state energy offices.
Good morning, Gil. Thank you. And Jade, I know you might not fill up to talking, so I'll kind of give you a pass here, but Jade is our commission representative, commission staff, and partners with us on our program planning and all of our regulatory requirements. So thank you for joining us, Jade. Ty.
Hi, Jennings, Cascade Natural Gas. I am a building code specialist. Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ty. Good morning. Thanks, Jade. There's a little note here from Jade that he's coming off an illness, but he's certainly available to chat as needed on the computer here. Devin, if you'd be so kind.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Devin McGreal, Senior Resource Planning Economist here with Cascade. Happy to be here.
Morning, Devin. Thank you. Eli.
Morning, everybody. I'm Eli Morris at Applied Energy Group, and I'm overseeing the conservation potential assessment we're performing for Cascade.
Morning, Eli. Thank you for joining us. Noemi.
Good morning, everyone. Noemi Ortiz with Cascade Natural Gas, Energy Efficiency Managers for Oregon.
Thanks, Noemi. Mike.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Mike Parvinen with Cascade's Regulatory Affairs team.
Morning, Mike. Caleb.
Yeah, good morning. I'm Caleb Reimer, Economic Analyst for Cascade.
Thanks, Caleb. And Brian.
Hey everyone, Brian Robertson, Supervisor of Resource Planning with Cascade.
Thanks, Brian. And Mark.
Good morning, everyone. Mark Sellers-Vaughn, Manager Supply Resource Planning with Cascade.
Thanks so much, Mark. John.
Hey, good morning, everybody. John Storvik, Energy Efficiency Analyst with Cascade Natural Gas.
Thank you, John. Morning, Sonia.
Good morning. This is Sonia Wald. I'm the Manager of Customer Systems for Cascade.
Thank you, Sonia. Ken.
Good morning, everyone. Ken Walter with AEG, and I'm the project manager on the Conservation Potential Assessment.
Thank you, Ken. Welcome. And Yoshi.
Hey, everyone. I'm Yoki Sakai, and I'm here today representing the Energy Project. Good morning.
I apologize. I think I mispronounced your name. I will try to do better. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks, everybody, for your participation. It's a very robust group for the advisory group. I'm very happy to see you here, and I appreciate your continued interest in our programs. So we've gone through our introductions. What I would like to do now is just take a quick moment to review thank you, Des. I'd like to take a quick moment to review the action items from our last meeting agenda, or excuse me, meeting minutes. You should have a copy of those minutes. I believe Des included them in the invite. So you can reference them there. They're also available on our website on the link. If you look on the Cascade website, we have all of our meetings posted. There's the videos, as I've mentioned before, but also with those videos is the synopsis, meeting agenda notes, meeting minute notes that Des provides for us there. From last time around, we had a agenda item here, a action item that Cascade needed to follow up with Amy Wheelis from the Northwest Energy Coalition to verify if AEG had included the 2018 Washington State Energy Code update for the 2022-2023 therm savings goals for the residential program. And John did look at that, and the 2018 WSEC was included in the last conservation potential assessment. And then I was to connect with our regulatory group to get discussions going on CCA compliance per Amy's suggestion. Those discussions are pending right now. I've been speaking with Lori and then also with our environmental group to make sure that we're both complying on CCA and what the opportunities are to make sure from a corporate-wide perspective that we're not coming at it from a siloed approach. So conversations are ongoing. We haven't called an external stakeholder discussion yet, but that's certainly an opportunity for us to continue those meetings. We're also talking not just about the CCA compliance, but we're talking with our regional partners about code compliance and what that's going to look like in July, after July's update, I should say. So that's a conversation later in our meeting. But I wanted to bring that up because that is part of that collaborative approach with our regional partners. And then I was also just to follow up with regulatory. to see if we could talk about the incentivizing of supplemental secondary appliances. And we are actually looking at that on our conservation potential assessment and reviewing it with AEG, who's actually going to be on the call today to talk about where we're at on our CPA in general. So that's kind of ongoing, but we're certainly reviewing our options and moving forward from there. So any questions on the meeting minutes from last quarter? Not seeing anything in the chat. So please let me know or stop me if I get ahead of myself. But I want to give everyone an opportunity to ask questions, weigh in. With that, since I don't see any questions on the last meeting, we'll go ahead and move into our first real agenda item here, which is our quarterly portfolio update. I would like to ask Des, please keep me honest around 10:30. I'd like us to be able to take a break, if at all possible, somewhere around 10:30. So if I don't say it myself, please remind me. I don't want us to go through straight 3 hours without at least a brief break, if nothing else. So for the commercial industrial, I think Brady, if you'd be so kind.
So the commercial industrial program completed Q1. Again, these numbers always go through a little bit of confirming as we get through the month, but these are pretty solid. We ended up about 121,728 therms, about 96% of our quarterly goal of 127,380 therms, and 23% of the overall yearly goal. Predominantly, we saw growth through multiple avenues. We really ramped up our in-person outreach as a program with all of our program staff beginning towards the end of Q3 of 2022. We also instituted a key accounts focus. So we took some of our larger users and knowing that one with code change, but also with the pending code change, but also with the opportunity for SEM type incentives through retro commissioning and controls and things like that, we would need to really increase the activity within our larger users. And we saw a lot of growth from that here in Q1. We saw a little bit of growth last year towards the end in Q4, but really we saw it come to fruition in Q1 and are building a real strong continued pipeline for the remainder of 2023. We do anticipate we're trending towards about 79% of goal. That's been slightly updated. We're about 83% now, but that's just based on projects that we have added most recently to the pipeline. So we are going to continue the in-person outreach ramped up. We're really, through our outreach efforts and marketing efforts, we really have been promoting walkthroughs with customers and looking for opportunities for retro commissioning, looking for opportunities, obviously, for equipment replacement, and really utilizing the code change as an opportunity to see growth in the commercial market, specifically with space heating and water heating. So that's about it in regards to both the numbers and kind of our increased outreach. Are there any questions there? Excuse me. So one of the focus that I'd mentioned in 2023 was a carryover pilot program that we've continued as a pilot for 2020 from 2022, excuse me, and that was SEM. So as a gas-only utility, the opportunities for SEM are there. They're just a little more limited, whereas for dual fuel, a lot of dual fuel utilities, they can capitalize on the gas savings, but see the majority of their savings through their electric. So what we've really focused on is that walkthrough, retro commissioning, adding controls, and really the messaging has been around focusing on getting the best out of the equipment, the current equipment that you have. Obviously, we're there for any equipment replacements, but we also want to look for low-cost opportunities for these customers to not necessarily reinvest in brand new equipment, but to take advantage of measures like the SEM program, and those are run through our custom program. We have developed several new opportunities in our pipeline through the SEM program. Those do typically take longer, so we likely won't see those come to fruition until a little later in the year. But that, in conjunction with the Clean Buildings Act and a lot of the planning that organizations, specifically schools and government buildings, are going to be doing in order to be compliant with the Clean Buildings Act, we're seeing a lot of opportunity for SEM projects there. One other pilot that we've utilized or focused on in 2023 is trying to promote a quarterly or a SPIF over in Zone 3. So that's over in Eastern Washington. We haven't had uptake yet, but we have a lot of interest in trying to promote the salesperson and the folks to kind of like the point of sale program on the residential side, to focus on taking the incentive off of the invoice so that customers immediately recognize the savings, and the businesses are promoted and are seeing some benefit from that. And so we've utilized or promoted this SPIF program in Zone 3. Like I said, haven't had a ton of uptake. Well, I haven't had any uptake yet, but we have a lot of interest in that. So any questions on pilots or anything else related to that? All right. Monica, do you want to talk about the code change and the potential of what that's going to look like? Do you want me to talk about that now on the commercial side, or do we want to address that later?
So, I mean, we're going to talk about it anyway. We can kind of transition into that conversation right now if we want to, like on the commercial side. So I think it's fine to start the conversation now, since we're whenever we have these overlaps, it's kind of hard to know when to fit it in. But yeah, go ahead. Let's jump in now.
Yeah, so kind of going back to the way we've leveraged the code change and how it's going to impact the program, we really promoted that, pre-July 1st, if you pull a permit for any gas equipment, you're going to be eligible for an incentive. And so we've really tried to help customers prioritize, large investments, small investments, but anything that they need to do to kind of take those space heating and water heating measures and maybe move them to the front of any updates that they're doing so that it will qualify for incentives. From our understanding with the code, customers that are doing retrofits are still eligible or able to install gas equipment as a replacement for other gas equipment. But the question is that the new code raises the efficiency level to a point where there's not a lot of savings for the program. And so that's one of the things that we need to try to figure out and that we need to navigate as we get a little closer to July 1st, and certainly post July 1st, how we message that code change and the impact on the program. And while there may not be a tariff change where boilers, for example, where we have set the incentive at, or the minimum at 90%, and now the code is essentially requiring them to go to 90%. Well, we may not have a tariff change and may still need to honor that. It's just, we are getting questions predominantly in the school market, the government buildings, where folks are really having to be a little more proactive and plan a little bit further out as to how the program is going to handle that moving forward. And so that's something, we'd be interested to hear from commission staff and from other stakeholders what kind of input there would be in terms of timing and how we best roll that out, and really what other utilities are doing to handle that potential code change.
Yeah, it's a fair question, Brady, and it's certainly something that we at Cascade, probably specifically me, have been scratching my head on the best way to address it. And I've spoken with Jade previously, and I've actually reached out to our partners in the other utilities on the best way to move forward. As we talked about in the last quarter, the code is a little more, I want to say ambiguous. Ty, you can correct me if that's not really the right word, but it's not, it doesn't seem to me like it's very cut and dry. So it's a little hard. There's a lot of it's up for interpretation, I'll say that. It does disallow use of natural gas in some situations. In other situations, it allows it under specific exceptions. So a lot of it's going to be a matter of how the individual code is enforced within the different territories and how the code official interprets it. So, you know, what is an emergency replacement? You know, that kind of thing is what is considered emergency or not. And Ty would have a much better take on the specific phrasing behind it. So of course, this is my version of it, but ultimately we have to look at it from our program perspective and what are we going to provide in the meantime when the code is supposed to go into effect, which is early July. And then how are we going to incorporate changes into our next biennial conservation plan? And so this is kind of a precursor to the conversation later in the meeting, but really it's looking at what are we going to change in July and what else are we going to change as far as the biennial conservation planning for next year? What can we actually plan for, incorporate, take information from our conservation potential assessment, and then incorporate into next year. And I think that's most of what our plan is right now. Is there's a couple of specific areas that we do want to update in July. I think there's like 2 or 3 things specifically that want to update in July, and then we're doing most of those updates at the end of this year to incorporate for our planning for the next year. And that could involve, you know, reducing some of those offerings on the commercial side because of the increased requirements for efficiency, or because the baseline is what is it, 10% higher on the commercial side than it otherwise was, which is in alignment with what some of our actual rebates are. So it's actually it's interesting to see how we're going to do it. I'll say that. I wish it was cut and dry, just because it would be, from a program implementations perspective, that's a lot easier to say, yep, you can do this, no, you can't do this. But it also curtails a lot of the potential that's already been identified for us. So it's not just new construction. We're also looking at the existing construction and what the impact is for replacements. So Ty, would you like to weigh in here so I don't monopolize the conversation?
No, I think you summarized it very well, Monica. The only aspect that I would say is that the code has become very conditional. So it's going to look at the totality of the circumstances driving this project or any project, and then determine based upon the conditions what the code requirements are. That is kind of a new way to structure the code. Is the code has generally been if you do anything, these are what the requirements are. And now they're saying, well, depending upon what the project is, well, we're going to say you have to hit this efficiency or efficiency plus, or perhaps it'll roll all the way back to the federal minimum standard. So depending upon what the conditions of the projects are, you could have equipment being not permitted, being permitted, but 10% above federal efficiency, or you could have it at the minimum federal efficiency. It just depends on what the conditions are. So that, as I said, it's very conditional, and it's going to be dependent upon the specifics of the project.
Thank you, Ty. And I think one of and Brady, you may have said this, so, you know, forgive me for repeating if you did, but I think there's a little bit of a cooling effect on some of our customers as they're looking at this and they're like, can I actually install this measure now? When do I need to install it? Do I need to look at the permit pull date? You know, what does this look like? And they're looking for assurances from Cascade that they're actually going to be allowed to move forward with their planned projects. And so it's been a lot of discussions back and forth between Brady and the customers and us and Ty, and trying to help them interpret what that looks like. Ultimately, in conversations I've had with Jade as well to see what the commission's directive is that I think the commission is still, I say commission, but I mean staff in general. Please feel free to correct me on that, Jade, if I'm misstating. But really, it's still a topic of discussion. I don't think there's any hard and fast rules right now on how to implement this from a program perspective. I haven't heard a lot from Avista. When I spoke with Avista, I think their manager actually recently changed, so I need to get in contact with them again and see what their plans are moving forward. But my understanding is they were moving a lot of their program offerings, especially on the residential front, to midstream. So they actually weren't going to be offering themselves, but more to the contractors and the manufacturers, I guess, or distributors, excuse me. So I'm not sure what that really means from a code implementation perspective on their programs, but we're still having those conversations. We're going to continue with that. Really, our plans when we get into July, or I guess we have to do a little before then because we need a little bit of lead time. But there's a new measure we want to offer on the commercial front. I'll let Brady speak to that one, excuse me. And then from a residential perspective, we do know that the ending R value for attic insulation is higher for the code than what we currently require. I think currently we require R49 and the code is noting an R60. So we are going to update our program requirements because that seems pretty clear, not conditional. That seems something that we can actually incorporate right away. And considering our format of having all of our program offerings in our biennial conservation plan as opposed to the tariff itself, then we can actually do an addendum to that biennial conservation plan exhibit. I think it's exhibit 1. We'll do an addendum, assuming the advisory group approves, and we'll add the measure that Brady's going to speak to and change the ending R value on the attic insulation for right now. There will be more changes because of code, but that's probably not going to happen in July for Cascade. That's likely going to be incorporated into our biennial conservation planning for 2024 and beyond. That actually is like the totality of the conversation I was going to have on code later. But I want to give Brady an opportunity to speak to that new measure that we'd like to incorporate, and then ask if anyone on the advisory group has concerns or additional thoughts and feedback that you've received in working with some other regional partners and utilities on their adherence to the new code.
Okay, yeah, I'll talk about, so the demand control ventilation for, there's specifically for kitchen ventilation, their makeup air units that we are looking to get approved and added as part of our prescriptive offering. Currently, we do incentivize these through our custom offering, but there's enough consistency in terms of size of equipment that's going in and a way of measuring it and cost effectiveness that we believe it makes sense to offer as a prescriptive measure. It's essentially going to be 50 cents per CFM, and we have the business case and everything all put together for that. But we would need to do pre-approval for those projects. So we are looking to get that approved and get that up and going as soon as possible. Because currently through the custom offering, it's an excellent incentive, but they become standardized in a way that it makes sense to offer in a program as a program through the prescriptive measure. Both in terms of promotion of the equipment and promotion of the measure, because regularly we're sending out and talking to customers and showing them our prescriptive measuring offerings. So it makes it top of mind, but it also incentivizes customers to look at something that maybe they haven't looked at previously. And with our food service measures having been trimmed down a little bit with code change to fryers and griddles and steamers no longer being offered, it's a really good opportunity for us to get back and have more offerings for food service equipment. And yeah, so that's something we would like approved as soon as possible, and that's a whole process, and I understand that, but just to kind of give you some background on what that measure offer is and essentially what it would do.
And this is Monica, just to clarify, and you said this, Brady, but I'm going to restate it. The offering is, we currently do incent or can incent for it in the custom program. This is just adding this particular measure as a prescriptive offering, which, as you stated, it brings it top of mind to customers. It actually is listed out there as one of the options instead of someone having to think, well, what can I do? What efficiency measures? They don't have to ask ahead of time to see if we have it. It does sound like we would need pre-approval, but they can see it in our listings. They know right away that it's available and then they can pursue it. So hopefully having something like this as a prescriptive offering would increase the uptake just from a visibility perspective, if nothing else. And then it makes it easier from that deemed perspective versus having to run a custom calculation each time it comes up. So not like
we're seeing more and more of these throughout. We did a series of projects at a chain restaurant 4 years ago, I believe it was. And that was kind of like, we thought there would be a massive uptake from there. And we've seen some, we just haven't seen as many as we thought, but we're hearing more from restaurants that they're looking at this seriously, and that I think us offering this as a prescriptive measure would promote it even more and we'd see even more uptake.
So my intention is to put it in with the July update that we're going to do for the residential attic insulation ending R value. Are there any concerns from advisory group members for us adding that to the offerings? Not seeing anything in chat either, so I'm going to take that as a no concerns, and that we'll move forward with that plan then, Brady. Hopefully that'll help us keep up with our targets, and as you mentioned, give the food service customers a little more opportunity for high efficiency upgrades. We do have some interesting insights that we're getting on our EM&V as well. And I don't want to take away anyone's thunder, so I won't go there with it. But I think that being able to target those food service vendors is really important. Being able to have opportunities for them. And when we did like remove fryers and a couple other things because of previous appliance standards, it really hurt the customers and it hurts our programs as far as uptake. And, you know, if someone does one measure, then they're kind of a captive audience and they're likely to do another measure moving forward. So it's that opportunity and reinforcement for people who are already engaging. It makes a big difference to have these additional measures listed out and available for them to take advantage of. So thank you, Brady. Anything else on the CI side that you'd like to talk about?
Nope, nothing else.
Anyone else from our advisory group have questions on the on the commercial industrial? I'm not seeing anything, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to the residential program highlights. I'm going to ask Jocelyn to help me with this if I have questions, but Jocelyn has been so kind as to not only help me with, not help me to do the setup in the room here, but to also pull together the quarterly highlights for a residential program, and then also in the agenda itself here. So it's been a really great work. Thank you. All right, so our residential program, we've paid 1,071 rebates, 124,000 approximately firms through the end of the first quarter, 24% of our quarterly year. So I mean that's goal. Excuse me. That's we're right on target for the quarterly goal. Keep in mind the quarterly goal is for the annual. Our annual goal, that's not the biennial goal. We still have the difference between last year's achievements and this year's achievements as far as biennial. So I just want to kind of be upfront on what that looks like. If you look at our current processing and our trends, we're forecasting 108% of our annual goal for the residential program. So that's exceptional. If you look at the amount of rebates we're getting in, the applications that we are able to process, the customer participation, a lot of it driven through our point of sale program. It's a pretty significant contribution there. We have over 1,000 residential applications in our working queue, over 116,000 therms just as part of that working queue. That's a big queue. So we are treading water, trying to make sure that we process these applications and get them through the customers. And there's kind of a not so virtuous cycle where if we have this big of a queue, it's great to see as far as knowing that we have the work to process them and get them to the customers, but in the same time, the longer things sit within the queue, the more questions we get from the customers on what their status is. So ideally, we have no more than 400 in the queue, 200 to 400, and we are significantly past that. This is the season when we do tend to get a backlog. We are planning on hiring a couple of seasonal or temporary assistants to get us through this backlog. Hopefully that'll help, but there is always that lag, and we need to train them and get them up to speed and get them to help produce. So that's a work in progress right now, but certainly trying to knock down that queue. But again, the queue is actually a good thing because we do have those projects to process. So that's positive. We've got customers participating. We've got, let's see, we've received 1,433 applications, which is roughly 46% higher than our 3-year average. And that didn't include that 400 rollover from the previous year. So we've got a lot of customer applications coming in. And as I mentioned, a lot of that is attributable to the point of sale program. A lot of the POS right now going through is weatherization services. We've talked about this before. We've got additional trade allies that have been enrolled. Stephanie specifically has been doing a phenomenal job of really working with our contractors, helping identify the trade allies that want to participate in the point of sale program, and then walking them through what that looks like. We're also going to be providing our bonus coupons this year through the point of sale program, or excuse me, through our online Trade Ally Connect portal. I think, did I say that right? Okay, so our Trade Ally Connect portal, which is a transition from previously, we have these $100 coupons that we would give 15 to each contractor, and they can use them to help customers, to promote customers to install that higher efficiency measure when they're kind of on the cusp and they're not quite sure they're going to do that more expensive measure. These coupons have, I think, probably been one of the highlights of our benefits programs for our trade allies. And this year we have decided, instead of spending all the time to print the cost and time to print them, mail them, distribute them to our contractors, that we're doing it through the TAC program, an online version where they can go in and they can actually print off or digitally provide them to their customers who can then submit them. So it's a significant improvement on the program side as far as labor, time to manage those, but it's also should make it easier for the trade allies to utilize them. And really that's been spearheaded by Stephanie. So thank you, Stephanie, for all the work on that and getting those contractors to increase their participation, which means increased rebate sent through the system. So it's a win-win. Has not been an easy process. I know that. And really appreciate the work that's been done to bring those additional applications to fruition and really customer homes incentivized and higher efficiency. So that's our end goal, right? Really excited to see if you can see here the application intake trend, just some significant spikes there for this year in 2023. I think that, I was going to say it speaks for itself, but I just spent a good 5 minutes speaking for it, so I'm not sure that that's the best phrase at this moment. Any questions on the POS program before I move on to the rest of our points here? Anything you want me to add, Stephanie? No, did good. Okay. All right. There's also, as we've noted, 2 more trade ally contractors that have been added to that point of sale program too. So we're still trying to grow it. Not all of our contractors are POS contractors. Ideally, we would get some more. We do expedite payments, just as a reminder, we do try to expedite payments for the point of sale program because it is the contractor essentially fronting the cost. And then we incent the contractor directly for that rebate or that install. As we've mentioned before, we're kind of just reiterating it here. We have much fewer builder applications that are coming through the system. It's probably linked to, well, it's likely linked to the code changes that went into effect in 2018. And of course, as we look at the 2021 code changes, new construction, residential new construction doesn't allow furnaces as the primary heat source. Natural gas furnaces is the primary heat source. It can be installed as secondary. So obviously we'll consider what that looks like as we move past July. But the builders right now are there's a cooling effect on the programs for builder applications. And then we did previously highlight that we were going to be doing more case studies and audiovisual with both Lexi and Taylor leading the program. We're going to have to kind of back down our hatches a little bit and reevaluate some of our outreach approach. Having said that, we are, still going to be doing outreach, of course. It's just going to be looking at how we can source that and the best method to make sure that we continue our messaging with our customers. We have done, as you can see here, we continue to do the directories. The BIAWC is the Building Industry Association of Whatcom County Home and Garden directory or guide. And then Tailored Living is a magazine that we've been doing every month. I think it's every other month in select areas of our territory. Best Version Media, that's again, I guess Tailored Living is twice a year, and then Best Version Media is another magazine as well. And that one is every other month that we've done for 2 years now. Mount Baker Theater is a theater within Bellingham, Whatcom County. And we've done a series of the shows that they had in the last season where we could pair with what the message of the show was and speak to the community about what offerings Cascade has. So that's what you're seeing here is these different ones. And again, developed by Taylor, so we're going to miss Taylor, but really appreciate the outreach that we've had that she's provided to us. So we have Monica, Jade. Joe, thank you. Sorry, I'm looking at a comment. All right, Jane, I'm looking at your comment here. On the builder app decline, are you seeing fewer new construction projects in Cascade service territory than in previous years? Or is this expected to be solely from code changes? Maybe I'll ask John to speak to that. I would say, well, actually, John, do you want to speak to it or do you want me to try to answer that?
I can speak to that. I believe that it's tied to the code changes. We specifically saw decreases in the number of applications coming in after the 2018 Washington State Energy Code went live, and as folks started, getting through the rest of the permits they had under the previous code, there just was not as many new homes with gas, so less builders were applying. Between a survey that we've done and post-code adoption study from NEA, the decrease in new homes using gas was around 85%, and I don't think I have a figure right now for the number of or the percent decrease in applications, but even in the first quarter of this year, it's about 50% of what we saw the year previous. And every year up to the implementation of the 2018 Washington State Energy Code, we saw the builder program continue to grow. So I have no other reason to believe that the decrease in new home applications is from anything other than the energy code.
Yeah, I would agree as well, John. I think it's energy code, and I think it's also just the push towards electrification we're seeing in a lot of cities. I think that's actually affecting it. I will say there is some code savings, I believe, John, you can correct me on this, but as we're talking about our annual report, I think NEA is attributing some code savings because of some savings attributable to code, stepping on my words here, that'll show up in that annual report. So that should be coming out, by June or so. But the advisory group will see it earlier, and we'll talk to what those timelines will look like. But it's definitely code. But I also know, as John mentioned, that NEA just did another study on permit holds. And Aaron, you could correct me if I'm misstating this. I know I just talked to Peter about it the other day.
No, I think, I'm comfortable going a little outside my wheelhouse, but that's pretty far outside my wheelhouse. So you probably know more than I about the timeline for that. But, we can certainly follow up the details if y'all need them.
Thanks, Aaron. I think that the Natural Gas Advisory Committee meeting that is, I'm trying to remember if it's this month or next month. Actually, it's just in a couple days. It's on Thursday. I think they're actually going to have kind of an insight into what that recent study looks like, and give. I don't think it's printed yet or published, I should say. So it'll just be a insights into it. But we can bring back information to the group here from that discussion. Thanks, Aaron. Thank you, Jade. Anything further you wanted to add on that, John, or are we good?
I just wanted to confirm that there are some savings that in our report from NEA for the 2022 annual natural gas savings. There are an appreciable amount of therm savings that are being tied to the energy code. The majority of it being the residential, and then some coming from the commercial code as well. But that'll be available once we submit the annual report to the CAG in about a month.
Thank you, John. NEA is really good about providing us the attributed the savings estimates and narrative around the savings estimate. And then they also provide an additional attachment that we add to the annual report about just all the efforts that NEA has done in the last year in narrative form about what they've done, what pilots are moving forward, what manufacturers are saying, what's planned for the next year. So essentially just an update on the activities since we do fund NEA along with the other regional gas utilities. I think there's a question.
Yeah, thanks, Monica. This is Yoki. My question is, and apologies if you went over it and I missed this already, but are you expecting to need to revise your projections for the residential new builds? And if so, kind of what's the timeline that you're thinking about for that?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Yoki. What we talked about in our last quarterly CAG meeting was whether the 2018 Washington State Energy Code assumptions were included in our conservation potential assessment. They were, and as part of those 2018 assumptions, Applied Energy Group looked at new home constructions, and as part of that, we actually did reduce the potential from those new homes quite a bit. I'd have to look at it, John. I know you brought up the numbers last time, but it was a significant decrement in savings assumptions, wasn't it?
Yeah, I believe it was a 50% decrement, which it's still a conservative estimate versus what we've actually seen occur.
Yeah, so it was decremented, but not as much as we're seeing impacting. So to your question, I think you're asking, are we expecting to reduce that potential estimate further for this year? It's a good question. It's something that I brought up in our last meeting about looking at whether those actual goals that we have right now are practical, considering the current drivers behind our programs. I would like to reevaluate that savings in this year. I don't know that we will be able to. Certainly for the biennial conservation planning for next year, we're going to take those assumptions into account. Ideally, yes, we would be able to for this year. I'm not sure that we would have support for that at the commission level to reduce the savings assumptions that have already been put in place. But it's a good segue into what we're seeing here as far as the biennial progress to goal. So if you look at it, we've got 49% of our residential goal right now, 54% of the budget, and then on the commercial side, we've got 43% of the goal and 25% of the budget spent. It's not, we could still make goal. I don't want to say that we couldn't, and we're certainly going to drive for making goal. There's a lot of things in place that make it a little more difficult than we would like to see to be able to reach those goals. One of them being the new construction and that cooling effect on commercial buildings, especially if natural gas energy efficiency measures can only be installed as secondary heat sources. That makes it pretty hard for it to be cost effective. That's something we're evaluating as part of our conservation potential assessment. So I didn't give you a yes or no, which would have been nice if I could give you a straight answer, of course. Ideally, yes, we would be able to reduce that. I don't know that we would have support to reduce it at this time.
Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other questions about the residential program quarterly update, or even the biennial progress to goal that we're seeing here? Or even there's some other graphics that we have in the agenda from the monthly intake forecast and the trends and everything. Any questions on those? Don't think I'm seeing any. I see Aaron added an invitation to join the Natural Gas Advisory Committee meeting. Thank you, Aaron. Cascade's been a member since almost inception. Really enjoy the participation in those natural gas advisory committees. And actually, Ty is going to be speaking about code along with Mark Rayleigh and a couple other experts at NEA on Thursday on some of the code impacts or perceived impacts to utility programs moving forward after July. So it should be a good meeting on Thursday. All right, so I'm going to move on to our pilot update. And there's a couple of different things that are going on. On the commercial front, I think Brady actually already spoke to what the commercial pilots are. So I don't know if we need to go in depth on the commercial side unless anyone had any questions about the ones that he already mentioned. On the residential front, we've got two major ones right now. We've got, I'm going to speak to the first one, Jocelyn, if we can go back on the slide. So the home energy reports, I mean, it doesn't really show much here, right? But visual reminder for me. We are working with EnergyX right now. We had them actually come and speak to the advisory group last October, I think. It was in October. About what the home energy reports are and what our plans are moving forward. Just as a reminder, that's a 9,000 customer group plus a control group where we will be sending approximately every other month a report on customized options for them to do behavioral change within their homes to reduce the energy usage. The expectation is about 2 to 3% savings across the control group. And it's been a really good opportunity for Cascade to work with our internal partners. And we have Sonia on the call here. She's been a really great partner in looking at what the technical side of being able to work on something like these home energy reports are. Cascade, and I don't believe MDU actually has engaged in anything like this in the past. So we might be a little behind some of our regional partners, mostly because these things they're not inexpensive to implement. I'll say that. So this is our first avenue into being able to explore home energy reports and really help our customers on a behavioral side, then be able to claim those savings as well. It's been great being able to partner with our information technology folks and walk through what this process looks like, what we need on the back end to make sure that we're giving our customers opportunities to weigh in, opt out if needed, what notifications look like, making sure that we're abiding by all customer privacy concerns and updating all of our processes on that front. So really great opportunity for us. We're excited that we kicked it off in March. We are right in the midst of looking at some of the technical aspects. We're working on what the format of that home energy report is going to look like, what elements we're going to include in it. Is it going to include terms, or is it just going to include dollar amounts, and what really drives the customer behavior, what speaks to the customers, what's too much to say. Everybody knows I'm probably the best one and saying more than I have to, right? But really paring it down so that it's a usable piece of a reference, I should say, for our customers to be able to make some changes. So I'm really excited to see what how that comes out. Our target for sending out the first home energy report, Carrie, I think it's July or August, right? And then we're looking at sending out a second one about 2 months later. So 2 this year, and then the remainder in the following year. And of course, we'll follow up with some evaluation on the how that project, how it moved forward and what kind of savings we actually do see at the end of it. So excited to see that it's progressing. Lots of partnerships internally. So it's been a win-win from that perspective. Not painless. It is quite a process, but it'll be fun to be able to offer this to our customers. So. All right, that's it on the home energy report. John, would you like to speak to the aero barrier? Excuse me.
Yeah, absolutely. For those that aren't familiar, we're working on an aero barrier pilot, which is seeking to observe and verify the benefits of air sealing in new homes. And so currently we are at the participant selection phase. We have applicants for climate zones 1 and 3, which covers, the Whatcom, Skagit area, and down there in the Tri-Cities, Yakima area, zone 3. And we're still waiting on some applicants for zone 2. So far, we've had none. So I've been trying to work with the Kitsap Builders Association to get the word out there. If we don't end up getting any applicants from zone 2, I think we should have enough participants between zones 1 and 3 to fill out the 30 homes that we're looking to include in the pilot. Coming up by the end of April, we'll be looking to select those builders. And then currently we're also working on MOUs, so just getting some MOUs out between us and the third-party tester, the Building Performance Center, and I'm not sure if we have already signed our agreement with Sustainable Living Center. They perform quality inspection services for us in Zone 3, and they're also agreeing to take on that verification for us for blower-door testing in these new homes. In zone 3, so that's part of their MOU, and then just working on the agreement between us and the builders that will be participating. So each builder will be able to apply for up to 10 homes and receive a $2,000 incentive. And so we're looking forward to getting the builders signed up, and certainly as the year progresses, we are aware that the building season is upon us, and so we just want to make sure we have this wrapped up in time that builders are actually able to air seal and not have to wait until possibly next year. Just recently, we presented at the Builders Association in Whatcom County. Myself and Ty Jennings were there. We also had an ESR, one of our energy service representatives in attendance, and that was a great experience. That was just last Wednesday. and we got to speak with quite a few builders there. And beyond being able to tell them about a product like AeroBarrier and the benefits of air sealing, tied that efficiency of AeroBarrier back to how does that help you satisfy code? How does it get you some energy credits? Overall, it was an awesome presentation, and really enjoyed the discussion that we were able to have. On that same topic of some of the educational goals for the pilot. Could you go back just one slide, please? We have a demo project that'll be coming up in June. That will be an opportunity for interested parties to just attend a hands-on installation of the product. There's some videos floating around out there if you really would like to see how it's applied. Pioneer Construction, which is one of the builders that we've worked with in the past and provided rebates to, has been using this product since 2019, and they have a great video that they've allowed us to share with the builder cohort on, kind of a builder's perspective of installing it. And then beyond that, they're willing to have a demo project. So we're still waiting to nail down the date there, but if anyone's interested in hearing more about that, please let us know. And yeah, very excited for that. Thank you. Thank you for that. Go back on that slide. We can move on to the next one.
John, just a plug for that video. It's actually, I found it fascinating to see how they, it's an animated version, but really to see what the process is and how it helps plug up those holes is pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, it's very informative. I can go ahead and I'll provide the links in this chat here once I wrap up, but we have a couple, one shorter that really shows the application of the product, and another one a bit more in-depth, probably about 20-minute video, and both are very interesting. So on the topic of AeroBarrier, one of the things that we are aware of is that the code update could impact possibly the results of this pilot. So when we started developing the AeroBarrier pilot last summer, the code update had not actually been, at least, we hadn't been brought up to date on possibly some of the things they were considering. It wasn't until later in the year that we really saw those final additions coming through and understand that gas is likely to just play a backup role in new homes as a secondary heating, so backup furnaces. The potential there for energy savings is decreased in regards to that. Beyond that, the minimum air tightness that homes are going to be required to meet was previously 5 air changes at 50 pascals. And now it's going to be down to 4 air changes at 50 pascals. So again, two items that reduce the amount of savings that will be available from air sealing in new homes, at least on the gas side of the equation. It's still going to be great for reducing the energy on air conditioning and whatnot. So that's certainly something that we could probably take into account. But there's some concern that the gas savings won't actually provide a cost-effective incentive, and that is part of why we're performing a pilot, is to investigate that to begin with. But tied to the biennial conservation plan conditions document, there are some considerations and some points of clarification that we're wondering if anyone on the advisory group has some advice or just would like to participate in some discussion around. So these are 3 sections of the, hold on, I'm just bringing up the text so I can read it.
And John, I'd like to note that they are also included in the agenda if anyone wants to take a peek at them separately. I think they're the last page, of the agenda for your reference, the excerpts that John's going to be looking at now.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Yeah, so they are the last page on the agenda. And these are the portions of the BCP that talk about pilots So quickly, I'll just read through them a bit, and then we can move on to points of clarification that we're seeking. So under that first bullet, section 4, subsection A, part 3, pilots, Cascade must consider in consultation with the advisory group implementing pilot projects when appropriate and expected to produce cost-effective savings within the current or immediately subsequent biennium if the overall portfolio remains cost-effective. Section 7, the final sentence of the annual budgets and energy savings, Cascade must allocate a reasonable amount of its program budget towards pilot programs, research, and data collection. And then the final section there, section 10, subsection C, conservation efforts without approved EM&V protocol. Cascade may spend up to 10% of its conservation budget on programs whose savings impact has not yet been measured if the overall portfolio of conservation passes the primary cost effectiveness test used by the Commission. These programs may include information only and pilot projects. Cascade may ask the Commission to modify this spending limit following the advisory group consultation. Just seeking clarification on, exactly how cost effectiveness should play into the pilot. Specifically, looking at that first section I called out, when a pilot is expected to produce cost-effective savings within the current or immediately subsequent biennium. When we did undertake the pilot, the expectation was that there could be some, but again, it's one of those areas where you can't guarantee it, and that's one of the points of having a pilot. It's an exploratory mechanism to kind of find new measures. And then below, the portion that touches on conservation efforts without approved EM&V protocol says that up to 10% of the budget whose savings impact has not yet been measured. Hold on, I need to close my door for just a moment. The main point is just understanding, exactly, we're able to spend 10% of the budget on programs whose savings impact have not yet been measured. And then pilots must be considered when appropriate and expected to produce cost-effective savings. So I think, on our part, there's a bit of a conflict between those two items where, we're able to set aside some money for programs whose savings impacts have not yet been measured, which is, part of what a pilot is for. And then a pilot must be, expected to produce cost-effective savings within the current or immediately subsequent biennium if the overall portfolio remains cost-effective. And the reason this came up was just, again, this concern about how the code could impact the actual energy savings available to AeroBarrier. I mean, in the homes that are being air sealed, they will all be under the current code. So, can use gas as the primary heat source. 5 ACH 50 is the bar they have to meet. But yeah, I'll pause there and just see if anyone has any clarifying questions to understand, maybe what we're seeking, or has any comments on maybe how to understand those two items in the VCP conditions.
I'll also clarify, and you can correct me on this, John, if I'm misstating, but we don't see a concern with it being cost effective at the portfolio level as far as absorbing into our administrative costs. So, programs as a whole on the residential front, certainly being cost effective. It's more the specific measure itself as we look at the new code changes in the new biennium, whether they would be considered cost effective under the standard processes right now. We are, as I mentioned, exploring with our conservation potential assessment, what the secondary heat source, if there's enough savings to validate offerings as well under that structure. But we did want to bring this up because this is the first time Cascade is really engaging in pilots of this nature. both on the commercial and the residential front, but wanting to understand what the regional practice is from our other utility partners, or if the commission has specific thoughts, or if it's just a matter of, not just, I don't mean it that way, but if it's a matter of coordinating with our advisory group as we are now to talk through what this process looks like, and making sure at that portfolio level that we're not risking our cost effectiveness thresholds, and that we're not exceeding 10% of the budget towards pilots compared to the other costs associated with the program. So just wondering if there's any feedback or comments from the group on those different aspects.
To Jade's question, how close to 10% do you expect these programs to come? At least with the existing pilots, it's not close to 10%. I think the total between all pilots right now, I have to check the total spending there, but we should be.
Take it as a to-do, John.
Yes.
I mean, if you can't pull the numbers right now, Jade, we'd be happy to follow up with the estimated percentage of the total budget. I think on the residential front, is it 200,000, and on the commercial front, it's about 200,000 combined.
That's what I was thinking. So around
Yeah,
4 total.
Our overall
400,000
budget for the
total.
year is like 14 million or something, 13 million. Can't be
For the
exaggerating, but-
biennium.
Yeah, well, the biennium's 24.5 million. So it doesn't exceed 10%. So we can come back with the exact numbers so we have a more definitive response for you, Jade. Any other thoughts or questions from the group? Thank you, John, for voicing the question and just kind of seeking clarification or guidance, or just thoughts on how others have worked through these types of directives in the past. So it's an ongoing conversation, and John spent a lot of time on this pilot, setting it up, speaking with Aero Barrier, talking to our Home Builders Association partners, working with Ty on code requirements and that presentation in Whatcom County, really being able to talk to people about what the technology is and the opportunities for customers. And really, this is one of those measures that's not from a providing incentives perspective, but just from a benefit to the customer. It's fuel agnostic. It's a weatherization measure. So it's exciting to see something that we could help, and anybody really utilize this technology to improve the new homes.
All right. Well, thank you. Just wanted, like you said, Monica, just wanted to bring this up and get everyone's, maybe opinion on it or anything like that, since we do need to be working with the advisory group on these pilots, and was a bit of a concern of mine with the understanding how the new code could impact the pilot, and moving forward, certainly we'll be continuing with the Aero Barrier pilot, and looking forward to what results we get from that. But just wanted to make sure that we brought up that point of clarification with the advisory group. So thank you.
That's great, John. Thank you. And I think Jade followed up with saying thinks that we're safe, that the portfolio is expected to be cost effective and still under 10%. But there's a to-do there, Desiree. So he'll circle around with his internal team and then come back to us if there's clarifications for us. Thank you, John. Thank you, Jade.
Thank you.
All right. I think that we are close to break time. Should we? Okay. So proud of myself for remembering that. All right. Let's take a 10-minute break. All right, it looks like it is 10:30, so we're gonna jump back in here. Noemi, are you available? Sheila walked out.
And just a reminder, I am recording and transcribing the meeting.
Thank you, Des. Okay, we might take another minute or two here.
I'm here. Sorry, I had the cough. I had the coffee maker going in the background. It was making too much noise.
All right, so I think we're ready for the low-income weatherization and program highlights. If you'd be so kind.
Yes. Get started. The next slide, please.
Noemi, do you want me to take the numbers and you take the?
Oh, yep. If you're back, yep, go ahead.
I am here. So we did pretty well in the first quarter of 2023. We've got 57 homes. I'm not going to read through the numbers for you, but there are a couple of highlights I'd like to bring your attention to. The range in cost of projects from a furnace tune-up to a measure that received 5 major measures. So we have a range of $169 to $40,741. Just to give you an idea of what's going on out there. This is the memorandum of understanding summary. We've asked the agencies to give us an idea of how many homes they can complete during the calendar year. We have an estimated 65 for 2023 with an average of about $19,416 per home for weatherization. The MOU is it's something that the agencies actually asked for from us initially because they wanted to be able to go to the executive directors and say, we're working with Cascade. Let's talk about how many homes that are Cascade customers that we can complete this year. So it's a tool for Cascade and these agencies to work together. It's not an inflexible agreement. In other words, we don't hold their feet to the fire on the number of homes. We just stay in open communication with the agencies so they can inform us of, if something changes or, oh my gosh, now we have a multifamily that's 20 units or something like that. I would say just regarding the number of projects completed in 23 and the projected amount of participation for the rest of the year is based on having open communication with the agencies and a good understanding of, what their barriers are and working with them to remove those.
Sheila, can I ask one question?
Sure.
What is our average cost per home for 2022? Do we know? Because it looks like the estimate is around 19,000 for next year.
I'm sure I have it. I just don't have it here.
Okay.
But I will provide that.
Okay.
Any questions from the group on the numbers for low income Q1?
Hey, this is Yoki. Thank you for providing this information. You mentioned that you were working with the agencies to hear what the barriers were and working to overcome them. Can you say a little more about what the barriers that you've been hearing are and, what the results of trying to overcome them are as well?
Okay. This is a perfect cue for Noemi because she signed up for discussing what the barriers are from the agency side. So take it away, Noemi.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you, Yoki, for the question. So in some of the barriers that we're encountering, and I heard back from a bit of the Washington groups, and a lot is relating to supply chain issues. One example, OIC of Washington reported out that they are 3 to 8 weeks wait times for their contractors to be available to perform the work, and even then within that time frame also to have material available, along with NCAC, which is also in the Yakima area, the lower Yakima Valley. They're also seeing some 3 to 4 week wait times in contractor. And one common thing there is that they share the same contractor. So a lot of the Washington CAAs rely on Richart family, which is in Vancouver and does pretty much all of Yakima County, Grant County, Klickitat, Kittitas. So they are at capacity as well. So that's what they're seeing in the Benton County area. One of the things they shared as far as a barrier was that they are having a hard time finding eligible households. Not as it relates to the income guidelines, but for the homes needing actual insulation and repairs, they're having a hard time identifying some of those homes. So I have discussed with that community action agency on what we can do to assist, and hoping to leverage some of the programs that we have with WEEF and the bill discount program that's coming, see if we can get some customers there for some of these agencies that are struggling. And as far as barriers, that's what we're seeing for the community action agencies. We also have a little bit more of the updates as it relates to Commerce. We've had information that they will be replacing their energy tool, the energy modeling tool. I spoke to the compliance manager and it is official. They do hope to have it completely replaced and implemented by summer. This is going to replace the TREAT energy model, and that is what currently the agencies are using to provide the savings to investment ratio and show that along with the priority list. One of the things I learned was that they will be moving away completely from TREAT and the actual SIR. So since they won't be using the TREAT and the ECOS software has a built-in energy model, they won't be collecting or providing an SIR. All of their projects are moving to be used under the priority list. So, and when we get the priority list, they don't show us a savings to investment ratio. That's just the approved items, pre-approved items for weatherization. I did receive a copy of the DOE priority list that's being implemented or approved nationally. Commerce has normally used a similar priority list. It hasn't always been identical. They now moving forward with this replacement of the implementing ECOS, they are looking to use the actual DOE deems measured priority list that's coming down. It's currently in draft, and that'll replace the TREAT. One thing that will continue, since the ECOS software isn't set to handle multifamily projects, the multifamily projects will continue to use TREAT, and or when they can, will use the priority list until they find a solution for this, and to see if even ECOS is going to be able to manage multifamily reporting on projects. This, as far as multifamily, it'll only be the ECOS will still be able to support the 4 units, 2 to 4 units. The multifamily that's anything above 5 is the one that'll continue. The agencies will continue submitting either a priority list or the TREAT until something else is until a different solution comes about for ECOS. They, aside from ECOS being implemented in the summer, there are some bugs they're working through. They haven't said exactly the date or month that they plan to have fully implemented ECOS. But again, this was also mentioned that it would be fully implemented in April. So it's still, Commerce is still doing a lot of troubleshooting there. So it could change. Important there that's prompting next steps on how we need to adjust the program tariff in Washington to accommodate the changes coming down through Commerce and the weatherization manual. And as far as the report up, that's all I have. If anybody has any questions.
Do we know when DOE is going to adopt their draft priority list? Do we have any timeline on the federal level?
We don't, that I've seen. I did speak to the compliance manager last week, and he said it had already been in place. However, it doesn't account for some of the measures whether the Commerce is hoping for. So it is back in review before they can go and use the DOE one. And if they can't get it, one of the issues I believe is as it relates to mobile homes, manufactured homes. So that's an issue they're trying to address. If they can't, then Commerce will use a similar DOE priority list and then make sure they add their coverage for manufactured homes, mobile homes.
Okay, thank you very much. That was very comprehensive.
No, I mean, do we have to do here to make sure that we update the program and do a tariff change? Is that going to need to be in effect before the end of this year?
Yes. It'll be, I want to say that to do this is that it'll need to be reviewed or in effect by the end of the year. With Commerce, everything surrounding this ECOS has been very unpredictable. as far as when it'll be fully implemented, since it was supposed to be July of last year, then it was April of this year, and now it's the summer of this year. So I do have staying in conversation with the compliance manager. He said he would continue to keep me up to date on changes in timelines, so I can continue that conversation and then just plan to have something in effect by the end of the year.
Okay, so when we do a tariff change, we actually have to do a tariff change at the beginning of 2024 as part of our conservation, as part of our biennial conservation plan. But if we have to do a tariff change before then, it does take a 2-month lead time to get it into effect. So we just want to make sure that we budget in that time or confirm that we're in a alignment with the requirements in the meantime, and what the actual tariff change needs to be. So maybe an evaluation of what the current language is, and we can notify the advisory group at least in draft form ahead of time. We have to give them a 1-month notice before we file a change in the tariff. So just timelines that we kind of need to keep in mind for changes.
Okay, and then I can continue to keep you and the group posted. We have one of the things is that since it'll continue to allow the priority list, I think it gives the flexibility if the agency, since we are doing that sort of hybrid program right now where we allow the tree and the priority list. So I think once we have a set date for ECOs, then that timeline, as you said, if it starts at the beginning of 2024, then I can plan that ahead the 2 months prior to give that notice or that heads up.
Yep, that works. We could just look at the language too and make sure it's more generic as far as like what commerce allows or something like that instead of specifying what the exact, I think we've talked about doing that before.
Might already be.
Yeah.
I think there's a strong reference to following commerce.
Versus
guidelines.
specific. Okay.
The weatherization manual, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's just kind of take it to do as far as the following up with the advisory group on what that timeline looks like, and then we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there another question, Yoki?
Yeah, thanks. So the other thing that I wanted to bring up that I mentioned in an email to the group in January is just that, with inflation, really impacting these programs and contractor costs recently. I'm just trying to make sure that all the conservation advisory groups are, considering the increase in weatherization costs that could occur with that, and that the incentives that are provided and the reimbursements are closely tracking actual costs rather than based on historical costs. And so I was wondering if we could just discuss that briefly, how the reimbursement and the incentive amounts for the weatherization program are set, and if we're fully reimbursing based on actual costs, or if we need to think about a mechanism for adjustment in the future there based on the inflation we've seen in the past couple of years.
Noemi, do you want me to field that to start with?
Please, yes.
Okay. So yeah, thank you for the question. Our programs are set up to actually cover the full cost of the install. So the agency, while the rebate is split into two, both the weatherization incentive program and then the enhanced weatherization program reimbursement, the agency is made whole for whatever the cost is, as long as it fits within the requirements for our program. So what that means is when we look at the cost-effective part of the equation, which is the WIP reimbursement, that is based off of the avoided costs and our levelized costs. I'm trying to remember what
it's the avoided cost, and then there's just some factors that establish what the
right?
avoided cost.
What the avoided cost is per measure. So that part can be affected by what the assumptions are behind the install costs. Having said that, the agencies are not affected by what the actual install cost is. We reimburse with that EWIP program. We make up the gap, the difference for the customers, for the agencies. In addition to that, right now, as part of our conservation potential assessment, we're reevaluating for some of the key measures, and I'm not going to go too far in depth. We're going to talk about that in a minute here, but we are including the low income sector. So we're going to have new CPA guidance around some of those install costs on some of those, top measures. We're not going in depth on every single measure, but we are looking at updates to some of the assumptions behind our program. So it's a really good question. And there's opportunity for us to improve what that application process looks like for those agencies. And really, in the long run, do we both need the EWIP and the WIP programs? I think there's certainly something that we can look at as far as reevaluating that structure of the program, but the agencies are not negatively affected from our programs with the inflation and the increased costs. We are making them whole. You will see that's one of the reasons I asked Sheila about the current cost per home versus like the MOUs, where I think it said that estimate is about 19,000. Our current cost per home, if you look year over year, it has increased, and a lot of that is due to increased costs, more holistic. It's the making sure that the agencies are able to actually provide, that we're providing the agencies with enough administrative support so they can actually provide the program. So we've increased our indirect costs and our coordination fees in the last couple of years. So it's a roundabout way of saying, yes, absolutely, what you're saying. Some of the costs of the program overall are going up, but it's not affecting the agency's reimbursement from us because we don't, we cover that cost with the EWIP program.
That's awesome. Thank you for that detailed explanation.
Anything further on your end, Noemi?
Nope, that's all I had. Thank you, Monica.
Thank you. Sheila, are you?
I feel complete.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for those questions. I really appreciate the conversation. So I'm not sure if I really need to go into the energy code discussion anymore unless we have additional questions. I think, as we mentioned, July is the current set date. There's some pushback at an industry level, so it's possible that could be delayed. I'm not going to assert either way, but we're still keeping an eye on what it actually looks like. And going to be prepared for it. Yeah, everything else here is pretty much what I'd said earlier. So barring any questions on the code update, I would like to move to the conservation potential assessment. And Caleb, I'll ask you to take the reins here. And if you could please introduce our guests. I know we've already had once, but maybe just reiterate the guests we have online to help present about the CPA.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the kick over here, Monica. So once again, my name is Caleb Reimer. I'm the economic analyst on the energy efficiency team for Cascade. Also joining from AEG, that's Applied Energy Group. We have Ken Walter as well as Eli Morris. Feel free to pop in and say hello if you choose. Excellent. So I'm just going to provide a quick little update on this slide of what we talked about actually at the last conservation potential assessment update in our CAG meeting, and then go through a couple of slides about what we've done work to date as well as work going forward. So in summary, we know that according to our BCP conditions document, we must do a CPA, which is a conservation potential assessment, every 2 years. And the goal of that is to identify all items that are cost effective and available for conservation resources. Also, it's a secondary goal. It's a knowledge tool for us. We use it to ask questions internally about what's available, what are possible opportunities for us in terms of extra programs or measures that we can offer. And it's also used for our integrated resource plans as well as the biennial conservation plan, which we'll have a little bit of an update to here shortly. As we know, we actually renewed our CPA services with Applied Energy Group, which is AEG. They conducted the last 2 iterations and they're working through the current one as well for us here. We can move on to the next slide. Excellent. We've got a couple of slides here to showcase. AEG was gracious enough to prepare these for us on behalf of Cascade. I'll walk through some of the demonstrations and provide information. And those on the call from AEG, welcome to hop in and provide any additional insight or help answer any questions that may pop up. So we can move to the next slide here. Great. Yeah, so this is a nice overview of the CPA modeling process. AEG uses LoadMap, which is the modeling tool, and it's built upon Excel. And it's really going to be more than just that one tool. It's more of a handful of tools working together. You could think about it in a we'll actually go back just real quick. You can think about it in 4 different phases. The first one, we start with market characterization, which is utilizing baseline studies, data that we provide, and also secondary data, like places from the RTF, for example, to get some baseline information to start from. Then We identify demand-side resources, which are things like equipment, measures, and emerging technologies such as gas heat pumps, for example, and their viability in our service territory for saving potential. From that, we build a baseline projection, which is a forecast that we use. And it also implements things like standards and building codes, things like regional gas limitations, that sort of thing are built into the baseline. And then we actually have the potential estimation afterwards. And we know there's different iterations of the potential, things like the achievable potential, economic achievable potential, and it moves on from there. On the next slide, thank you. Yeah, we can talk about a little bit more about market characterization. One thing that's interesting with our market characterization, it's leveraging the prior analysis from our last 2 CPA studies with some updates to them. On the right, you'll see a couple of images really demonstrating what's a part of the market characterization, but we don't need to go into too much depth, but it's kind of interesting to look at, such as in the bottom right, the commercial gas use per square foot based upon different heating measures, food preparations, that sort of thing. What it is, market characterization provides a foundation for potential for defining how energy is currently being used in our service territory. We do have a robust characterization as a part of the CPA. There's some different things you can think about it, like, for example, residential customers. They're segmented by housing type and income group, which is great for thinking about the equity portion of our service, as well as for climate zone. And then we also have our commercial customers that we segment by business and building type, and our industrial customers as well, based upon what they produce, things like food products, metals, that sort of thing. What that data is used for is think about the presence of gas equipment and the average use per customer, which provide in a full format forecasting out up to 2050 at this point in time to use up real data as much as possible. And we also use supplementary information from NEA surveys, the DOE, RTF, wherever we need to get extra information that we don't have on hand to be able to inform that load map model. Next slide, please. Great. So we've touched upon this a couple of times in this presentation already, but as a reminder that WSEC 2021, as well as municipal gas adjustments, that's going to be a big part of what we're looking at for this CPA iteration. Reason being, it's got to get a big impact on our program and the program for the next up to 25 years at this point in time. So we're looking at converging large impacts from the Washington State Energy Code, some things like the mandates for electric heat pumps for space heating and water heating in new buildings, which we're expecting to be very limited. There's further increase on strict weatherization requirements for buildings, and it also affects if there's renovations or alterations that are being sufficiently applied to this. And one thing that we talked about over the past year or so, it's still relevant, of course, and most likely more relevant going forward in the future. Municipal mandates like Bellingham, they're going to be separate from the WSEC, but it's a similar idea that we use. And we actually model that through customer counts and load forecasts. On the right, you see a couple of expected impacts. One thing that's pretty large for our program that we're expecting to be occurring once the CPA is finalized for us. Natural gas furnaces and water heaters will only be present in new construction as secondary units, if at all, which will significantly impact and reduce the saving opportunities. Along the same accord, there's a lack of natural gas equipment in new buildings, which removes Energy Star homes and Build Green homes as gas savings measures. It's pretty much just a one-for-one change. We're very confident in that result. Next slide, please. Great. And this slide, it's just a couple of sentences, but it's really a very large idea of what do we want to focus on for the CPA update. There is a limited amount of time in order to actually go through the CPA update. So we want to make sure we focus on, in this case, the top 30 most important pieces and measures and ideas and assumptions around those, which constitute a vast majority of the actual savings potential for us. For example, there are measures that were updated with cost and savings from the RTF since the last CPA. Those include really big ticket items, residential furnaces, water heaters, smart thermostats, windows, and weatherization measures. There are also other measures from WSEC code changes and municipal bans, like furnace and water heaters that we talked about on the last slide, and building shell measures with some big ticket items. And there's also specific regional interest and conversations. At the top of our mind is gas heat pumps and dual fuel heat pumps. We're anticipating a full section of narration as well as an iteration of what we're expecting for heat pumps in the current phase, as well as going forward, savings potentials, technology, that sort of thing. I think I'm pretty interested to learn more about that as well. And then also the top performing and high interest measures that we instituted from the last CPAs, as well as the real-time data that we've been seeing in 2020, 2021, and 2022, which we're anticipating to either be similar or changing in the future. Those are the type of assumptions we're calibrating in the model. Next slide, please. Great. It's a great slide to showcase where we're at and what our next steps are for us. So at this time, an AEG is welcome to pop in to provide any additional insight. Our CPA models are running, the interplays through them are working out quite well, and we're incorporating some of the last pieces of the model because we are expecting a draft delivery date here at the end of the month, as well as a final report to be delivered by the Washington Commission, I should say to the Washington Commission in June. Lastly, we have our next KEG meeting in the middle of July, that's July 12th. The AEG folks on the call have graciously volunteered to present some results, provide some more insights, and also answer any questions once those final thoughts are known. We have just 2 more slides here, I believe, for the CPA update. Excellent. So this is an action item. The AEG folks on the call have also offered to provide a load map demonstration called approximately a 1-hour virtual presentation of what load map is, a baseline of how it is used, and maybe if any questions pop up, we can also walk through how it is demonstrated and what the results are like from that. So for the action item, if there's any members of the KEG on the call right now that wish to participate in some sort of demonstration, we're currently targeting the week of June 5th to the 9th. Once again, that's target, not a finalized. But my specific request is those on the call, if you would like to learn a little bit more about load maps, spend about an hour on the demonstration virtual call, please just send a message to Monica. Her contact, I'm sure, is available in the agenda. Just let us know what you're thinking that you'd like to participate, I should say, to participate in the meeting. And also if you're available that week of June 5th and 9th, and specifically maybe there's a particular day or part of the day that'll work best for you. We have just one more slide. This is really just a summary of what we were talked about, the upcoming milestones. So we'll need to elaborate on that. Once again, culminating with the presentation results at the KEG meeting in the middle of July for us here. Are there any questions on the call about the CPA process, what's undergone and what we're thinking about for the future here?
So, Caleb, I just want to draw everyone's attention to your timeline milestones. The delivery of the draft to Cascade is the 24th. Submit a draft to our advisory group is May 1st. So that's something that the advisory group needs to keep an eye out for, is the draft conservation potential assessment. We have to have it filed to the WUTC by June 1st. So we'll be seeking feedback from you by probably mid-May, I'd guess around the 15th or so. I don't have a calendar in front of me, but typically we try to give about 2 weeks to look at it and give us feedback. And then AEG needs to deliver that final to Cascade, and then we submit it to the WUTC. So please keep in mind that we will be forwarding that along to you, and that's not the only deliverable that we're going to be forwarding to you for review. John will be talking about our annual report as well. These are very time-sensitive items that we do have pretty strict filing deadlines, and this kind of feeds into what I was mentioning to Noemi. We have to give them to you, our advisory group, a month ahead of time, and so this is that's what you're seeing there, is that May 1st deadline for us to get it to you, and then our ask is for you to take a look or make any comments within approximately 2 weeks. And Caleb, let's take that as a to-do so that we can follow up with the advisory group and let them know when that return reply date would be as well. I should have asked you to include it there and I did not.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll plan on, it's going to be the 12th of May, which is the Friday of that month. That'll be the plan.
Thank you, Caleb.
Excellent.
Ben or Eli, did you have anything specific you wanted to add about the CPA work right now?
I didn't.
Yeah, I think Caleb did a great job.
Yeah, appreciate you two both for joining in the call here. And of course, if any questions arise, great partners of the AEG throughout the process and of course going forward. So looking forward to that draft report as well as making the final adjustments and getting it submitted here just over a month. Thanks for joining, everyone.
Thank you, Caleb. Thank you, AEG partners. We appreciate the ongoing participation. We have our annual report update now. John has taken the reins on tracking, producing, reconciling pretty much the annual report. So if you'd be so kind, John.
Absolutely. Thank you, Monica. Just to cover the important date first, May 15th, we'll be submitting a copy to the KEG. So all of you will have a chance to just go over it and provide any feedback or, submit questions that you might have about the report. And we'll go ahead and implement those points of feedback before we submit to the commission on June 15th. So that's when the final copy will be due. And then we're moving along well. The annual reconciliation of rebates has been completed for residential, commercial, and low income. We also have the NEA report And savings, I believe we have the report. I think Monica did follow up on that. Monica, can you confirm?
Yes, we did get it.
Okay, I thought so. We're looking good there. For those not familiar with the structure of the annual report, we have the main body of the report and 6 supporting documents that go along with it, which includes program details for the residential, commercial, and low income, which includes a breakdown of rebates by project. And then we also have a cost effectiveness work paper that looks at the, how cost effective each program was together as a portfolio. Each of the programs has their own cost effectiveness built into their work papers, and then there's a cost effectiveness at the portfolio level. That's a separate document. And then we have an outreach report and the NIA report. The work papers for the residential, commercial, and low income and the portfolio level cost effectiveness are virtually complete. We're waiting on a couple of items to come back from accounts payable regarding some tax items for services in 2022. So we could have waited until we received those final numbers from them. However, if we had done that, we would have barely any time to actually write the report. And from the amounts that we are anticipating, they shouldn't be changing or having, I shouldn't say that. They shouldn't be having large impacts or noticeable impacts on the cost effectiveness for any program and at the portfolio level. So we're going to go ahead and move forward with the numbers that we have, knowing that we'll probably need to come back and do a true up on some of the numbers, but overall it won't be changing the narrative there of the report. So we're moving forward on writing the report. We'll be working on writing and revising it over the next few weeks before we submit it to the CAG. It's going well. We're looking forward to getting that to you and being able to share all of our achievements in 2022 and do a check-in on our progress for the biennium. And excited to get that out to you all.
And same thing I said for the EM&V study. You'll note that the filing deadline is June 15th here. And so John has noted May 15th, we'll send a copy to the Conservation Advisory Group. And John, can I ask you to do similar of what Caleb said with setting the deadline on when you'll need the review back from the advisory group? Approximately 2 weeks out from that date, I assume.
Yeah. So, if there is some, so there's about 4 weeks between when we'll share it with you all and when it's due to the commission. 2 weeks after that, we need the feedback. If there is some small items that come back after that, we can look at it. But if it's too close to the deadline, there isn't time to incorporate that. So we'll be looking at getting the feedback by June 1st. That'll leave us 2 weeks until the filing date. And that should provide about 2.5 weeks for review and feedback to be submitted.
Excellent. Thank you, John. When we send it to the advisory group, we'll make sure that it is highlighted, the date when we'd like to see feedback. And I typically, or someone, in this case, maybe John or Caleb, depending on the project, will note, the requested reply date. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, just saying thank you. Sorry.
I was going to ask if there are any questions about the annual report or the timeline that John has provided to the group here. Not seeing anything. Great job, John. Thank you. It's been so nice to be able to put this in John's very capable hands and to watch the process of reconciling and seeing all the efficiencies that he's added to something that we've been doing for quite a while. So it'll be a really great product when you see it. Really excited. Okay, so we now have a really quick IRP update. I think that Brian said he had to get off the phone, so he's unfortunately not here, but there might be other folks from the resource planning team if there's specific questions. Brian had noted that the final Oregon IRP filing date was moved to April 27th. Based on a expected FERC decision, so that's upcoming. The Washington IRP was filed on February 24th, and Cascade was recently notified. Comments are due from the public, submitted by 5 p.m. on April 28th, and then the recessed open meeting will be held Thursday, June 1st at 9:30 on the Washington IRP. Are there any questions from the advisory group? Thank you very much. So I think we're on to our EM&V. Caleb, would you be so kind?
Yeah, certainly. Well, let me get to the next slide, please, everyone. Great. Yes. Once again, we've got a little introduction of the work that we've completed in the past for this EM&V update. ADM Associates, Inc., which we'll refer to as ADM, they were selected to complete the annual independent third-party measure level EM&V for Cascade, which is the nomenclature we're using for this specific subsection of EM&V. If you'd like any more specific details, it's outlined in section 9C of the last BCP conditions document. The commercial program was selected for review in 2023. Some highlights are the space heating, water heating, envelope measures, food service, and the custom offerings. And then program billing data from 2019 to 2022 is being used to update deemed savings estimates based on actual performance. Those years were selected, one for data integrity, having about 3 full years of data, but also more of a pre and post-COVID sort of mentality, specifically important for food service in particular. We'll go to the next slide, please. And I apologize. I definitely should have also welcomed Adam Thomas, once again, the principal for ADM on the call here. I'll be walking through the subset that we've been working with Adam in terms of research area status updates, but please feel free to pop in, provide any additional insight, or answer any questions that arise. This slide shows 3 of 5 main research status areas. Once again, space heating, water heating, and building envelope. More recently, for space heating, we've completed the billing data analysis for boilers and furnaces, as well as for radiant heatings, and water heating and building envelopes. Those analysis processes are pending. We've had a meeting call in the last couple of weeks talking about going through those, such as load totals, where the assumptions are coming from, and also reviewing some specific projects with those incorporated. On the next slide, please. We have 2 more research status areas provided, being food service and the custom project offering, which of course is a very large part of the program historically for us. In terms of food service, you can see we're once again going through affected code and standards updates, especially those affected by the WSEC 2021 changes and our assumptions of what's going to be incorporated in those. Kind of interesting, and Monica actually mentioned this a little earlier in the call, things like fryers and steamers and dishwashers, being able to address the savings premiums and seeing if there's any high efficiency units which might still produce viable savings, whereas currently we don't have such as fryers currently being offered. We're reviewing cooking efficiencies, idle BTUs, preheat BTUs, and that sort of thing. Go ahead, Monica.
Yeah, this would be a really good opportunity if Adam can weigh in. I was excited to hear about the fryers. It's not just about the savings potential. There's other aspects, as you were just saying, to keep in mind that weren't necessarily taken into account when we were looking at the efficiency and the potential of actually having rebates because of the appliance code standards. So Adam, would you be able to weigh in?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been pulling the equipment specifications for every individual model that's been incentivized through the program prior to the new code adoption. And we've been sort of calculating the impacts of the 3 sort of components of efficiency from the food service equipment: the improved idle rate, the cooking efficiency, and the improved preheat BTU. And what we had found was for the average fryer in the program, still produces about 120 therm savings compared against Energy Star, minimum Energy Star qualifying as the standard. And that's because there's cooking efficiencies ranging from 10 to 20% higher than Energy Star requirements. And there's idle BTUs that are sometimes as much as 30 to 40% lower than Energy Star requirements, because there are numerous models that are above that threshold. And we found that about the savings, the preheat BTU is a tiny portion of savings, but for the other 2 components, about half the savings comes from the idle BTU reduction and half from the cooking efficiency. And so what we're examining in this analysis is what's the savings compared to minimum Energy Star qualifying, and what's the incremental cost compared to minimum Energy Star qualifying, so that an appropriate incentive can be set up. I'm thinking about this because though there is a minimum standard of Energy Star under the new code, this is a sector that faces far more competition for the used aftermarket options, as opposed to what you would see in space heating or water heating, where businesses are more likely to purchase equipment new. So there could be a compelling case to be made of an incentive for, even if using the code of Energy Star as the standard for calculating savings, an incentive could help encourage the choice of new premium efficiency above lower cost used equipment options that may or may not even be Energy Star qualifying. So, but that's, walk through that example in Friars, but we've gone through and completed a similar analysis on convection ovens, conveyor ovens, and combi ovens. Those four making up the sort of the bulk of participation in these programs and savings, generally speaking. Happy to entertain any questions on the subject if anyone's curious to explore this further.
Adam, we talked about the potential for a specific qualifying list of equipment.
Yes.
So that it wasn't just Energy Star, but these are above because of the idle rate or because of this, these specifically would qualify, and maybe being able to incorporate that into the program to add these measures back in because we have demand.
So yeah, and we took the numbers we had found of about 120 therms per was taking the savings from the equipment rebated anyway without having a specific qualifying list. So that was also inclusive of some that were just, some that were zeros because of just being at the Energy Star minimum standard. So that was an average overall, which kind of leads to there's two schools of thought here. Do you still incentivize it as is anyway to keep the list easy, or do you carve out a subset list of qualifying equipment that won't match an Energy Star list? It would have to be sort of unique to the program, but of ones that might, for a fryer might, for example, say, at least 60% cooking efficiency and less than 7,500 idle BTU, as an example. And looking at models that just meet that criteria, you're getting more savings than what I discussed, in that my 120 also had zeros included in the average. So that is something we are going to talk about in our report and recommendations for follow-up, saying, if you go for just allowing the list, here's what you've seen, the Energy Star list, here's what we've seen historically compared to Energy Star minimum, versus if you create the Cascade Fryer list, here's the type of savings you could see by having these sort of premium above Energy Star efficiency requirements. There isn't an easy designation to go for, in that there isn't really a Energy Star most efficient designation for any of these. So that's why it has to be a more customized list, looking at specific performance criteria, and we would require some training and education on part of the participating vendors. But that is an avenue through which there are still viable savings for these above the requirements of the new code.
Great. Thank you so much, Adam, for giving us a little bit of context on that.
Adam, this is Sheila. Do you have just any idea how long a list would be? How many fryers would be listed if we had a customized list? Like a couple hundred, or what are we talking?
It's not going to be a couple hundred. Closer to a couple dozen.
Oh, a couple dozen
of fryers.
That seems. Yeah. Well, thank you. I just wanted to find a point on that.
Yeah, because because it's pursuing the premium efficient subset, of which the major manufacturers all have one, or at least one, but doesn't make up the full menu of what they sell.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much.
The list would be inclusive and representative of all the major manufacturers, though.
Good information. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
Yeah, excellent. I guess I could kind of close up the last thought on this slide. We also have the custom program offered. We see the analysis is still pending. One thing we've done recently with this is pull a subset of approximately a dozen or so custom offerings, go through the actual applications, what was assumed in there, different actual calculations that were applied to those to get some of the stratified savings for them. So that's just a nice overview of what we're looking at, those 5 different research areas. And on the next slide, I believe it's the last one for this specific subset. Excellent. It's our next step list. So we're at that part here in April. We're reviewing additional program information, like I just mentioned, calculation, savings, program applications, that sort of thing. The next phase for us here, we're anticipating being customer surveys at the end of this month or into May. Of course, we'll know that as a part of the customer survey process, we're working with our customer experience team, that's Cascade's customer experience team, I should say, to make sure that our call centers know what's going on, know what calls may come through, and also make sure that we're working with an approved list of questions and a culture process that we're going throughout that. So that'll be our next docket to complete this process, because we are looking at a draft EMV report in May, followed by a final report in June, kind of a similar timeline to the CPA in that regard. Are there any other questions from those on the call? Any other things we should be thinking about for this specific third-party measure level EMV process? Well, excellent. If any questions pop up, feel free to submit them in the chat or send myself an email. It's caleb.reimer@CNGC. More than happy to work with Adam at ADM as well as just myself to go through any of that. We can actually move on to the next slide. Great. So this is a separate topic, but a similar topic. So once again, we were just talking about our program, I should say our measure level third-party EMV. Now we're going to be talking about biennial program EMV. And we're going to go back a slide. I apologize. Back to the original slide. Sorry. Excellent. Right there. Perfect. Oh, great. So we're actually looking at the process for a portfolio level EMV work for the 2022-2023 biennium. If you care to read it, it's outlined in section 9D of that same conditions document of the BCP. We're looking at about a year or so from the draft delivery date for this product. This is something that's going to be an evolution of EMV work for the program in the past. We want to make sure to get started as soon as possible to have ample time to produce this. Specifically, there is an action item for this. Cascade is currently considering retaining ADM services for this work in addition to that measure level third-party EMV work. We've had success working with them, and the program and process seems to be working out really well so far. So my specific question is, for those on the call, are there any concerns or issues that might arise from your perspective in requesting ADM services for this work? I should also mention they have specified an interest in completing this already, although the full details and formalities have not been worked out yet. Okay, so Monica, feel free to hop in if you choose.
Yeah, I was just saying one of the reasons we're bringing this to the advisory group is because this is the first time Cascade has done the annual measure level evaluation, measurement, and verification, and then also at the end of the biennium, the portfolio, process, the whole process level evaluation as well. So from an industry perspective or partner utilities, other regional utilities, is there a concern with using the same evaluator for both the measure level and then the total process evaluation? Or is that something that we actually need to go out for specifically an RFP and get interest from other companies on providing that? I can see some benefits with the parity, with familiarity with the program. ADM has only been working with us for the first half of this year, so they're not. We haven't been using them for years and years and years, but wanted to make sure that whether there are or are not best practices or concerns from a integrity perspective with that being an evaluation for the program. I'm not hearing anything and I'm not seeing anything in chat. So I would ask as a to-do, if any of our advisory group members do have concerns, please feel free to email Caleb and I, and then we'll be happy to reply and as we determine our next steps and setting up for that. The scoping of the project and then the pre-work and everything is something that we have to kind of get on board with right now to be able to meet the deadline for next year. And this is actually to be filed with our biennial report at the end of the biennium. So it's to be filed by essentially June, I think 15th of next year. So we just want to make sure that we're starting work now, so we're not, to the point where we're having to expedite or rush things. So getting ahead of it this time, hopefully. And please, if you do have those concerns, let me and Caleb know within the next week or two, because otherwise we do have to get on top of the request for proposals probably this month to get those out. So that was it for me. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And I think the next slide is the last thing I'll be talking about here in this call. It's the biennial conservation planning. That's the BCP. And on the next slide is specifically for the 2024-2025 biennia. So we have started this planning process for the 2024-2025 biennia. Once again, if you care to read more, it's outlined in section 5A of the proposed conditions document of our last BCP. As we mentioned earlier, one of the main contributing factors and information sources for this BCP will actually be the CPA that we're currently working on finalizing. That'll help us build out a tariff and some other pieces that actually go into the conservation plan. On the next slide, I think is going to be the wrap up for this. So once again, this is going to be something that we are freshly working on, something that'll be at the top of our mind, especially towards the second half and the beginning of the second half of this year. Section 6F of the BCP conditions document actually outlines some of these requirements. So in the center there, we'll see our timeline as listed with the date on the left and the item on the right. Some of these are going to be internal goals or deadlines for us. Some of them, however, are going to be hard deadlines, specifically the last two at the bottom being the draft submission and the WTC submission dates. So we're currently working on the outlining and planning for it. We've gone through the last BCP section as well as thought about some new programs and processes to be incorporated in there. We've got a nice plan going forward of how we're going to be attacking that piece by piece. And then right around June, we'll be looking at completion of the data collection. That's going to be when we're anticipating the CPA to be finalized, and we're going to begin the writing phase. Once again, that's going to be an internal piece as well as the internal piece on 8-1 of a first draft with savings potential. However, there's a mid-BCP KEG meeting, which I believe has already been sent out and fully planned out. So that's going to be a hard deadline on the 9th of August, having an update meeting to discuss where we're at with the process and provide some insights and some assistance for our team in producing that document. A couple of internal documents, looking at September 1st and October 1st being internal targets for first draft for some of the largest pieces being the program details and budget, as well as the program tariff and exhibits shortly thereafter. We feel if we're following these internal as well as non-internal deadlines, then by the middle of October and November, we'll be in a great place to actually submit that draft and then submit the final to the WTC for review. Are there any questions or any more specifics? Yeah, go ahead, Monica.
I'm sorry, Caleb. The one deadline that I think that we left off, and I don't know if it's all that relevant, but just to bring it to light, is I think July 1st is when we have to start coordinating with the advisory group on our biennial conservation planning process. So we're actually starting that coordination now, but that the 6F section of the conditions document noted specifically by these are dates that we have to meet in coordination so that you as our advisory group members get the opportunity to weigh in on the savings potential before we submit the final draft. You get to weigh in on the program details and the budget before we submit the final draft. These different elements as we develop what that biennial conservation plan looks like. And then you get the you get the drafted complete document in your hands by October 15th, and then we file that with the commission by November 15th. So just a little bit of feedback on what that looks like. Some of these different elements of the biennial conservation plan have moved up by about two weeks to a month quicker than we have than we did in the last iteration. So just kind of it makes it so summer is pretty structured in where we need to get these to use, and you have opportunity to weigh in. So just kind of keep an eye out for emails and communications from Cascade as we move into the summer, so that you get that opportunity to weigh in as you'd like, and as we obviously are seeking feedback as we develop our programs. Keeping in mind, that code change is really going to be impactful, so we're going to have to incorporate that across the board when we look at our conservation plans for the next 2 years.
Great, thanks for that clarification. That's the last slide in terms of the BCP update. Definitely welcome any questions at this point. However, we're extremely welcoming of any questions, feedback, thoughts, and guidance as we're actually developing the project here the next couple of months. So I'll leave it off with that. We can move to the next section. Thanks everyone for their time on discussing these, 3 or 4 separate deliverables. I'm looking forward to actually submitting and then working on the next thing.
Thank you, Caleb. Do we have any questions, comments, thoughts on the biennial conservation plan process for the 24-25 biennium? I'm not hearing any. Please let us know if you have questions or comments as we move forward. So we're towards the end of the meeting. We're about a half hour ahead, which is awesome. I'd like to give anyone an opportunity if they have any questions. In the meantime, I'm going to go over real quick the following meetings that we have planned for this year. We've got our Q3 meeting. Caleb mentioned it. It's July 12th. We'll have a conversation about the start of the biennial conservation plan. We'll be talking about the status of our pilots, including that home energy report, because we'll be pretty close to being able to send that out by that point. So that'll be exciting. Biennial conservation plan process, progress, and then we'll be able to do the conservation potential assessment results as well. Our AEG partners will be presenting on what the results are from that CPA. We'll talk about code next steps and what the analysis is as we incorporate it into our biennial conservation plan. And then Sonia Wald has volunteered to provide a presentation during the Q3 advisory group meeting on data security and protection that Cascade and MDU has in place as we look at our new processes for providing data. We're seeing more and more customer requests coming in for data and benchmarking, considering the Clean Buildings Act and just other interest in whether that's upgrades or transitions, or what does that look like for our customers. And so we're trying to make sure that we're consistent across our utility, and then also incorporating all of the newest cybersecurity concerns and customer data protection and all of that. So Sonia's volunteered to provide a feedback about what the utility is putting in place to make sure that we are meeting those requirements and making sure that we're protecting that customer data. I'm excited to see what that looks like for Q3. And then we have our mid-biennium teams meeting. That one's only going to be an hour and a half instead of our, marathon 3-hour meetings. And that'll focus strictly on the biennial conservation plan. Obviously no obligation to attend, but we'd appreciate feedback as we look at what that process is. And then we have our final Q4 meeting in Bellingham, and that'll be via Teams and in-person hybrid as we offered today. And just a reminder, these advisory group meetings are from 9 to noon, typically with the exception of that mid-biennial conservation plan one that we have scheduled for August. And I think that is it. So are there any additional questions, items you would like to make sure that we address in our next advisory group meeting, follow up, anything along those lines? I'm not hearing anything. I want to say thank you again for everybody. Thank you so much for the other presenters, for our guests from ADM and AEG, and for taking the time to listen to me for the last hour and a half, two and a half hours, sorry. All right. So thanks so much, and I hope you have a lovely day.